Karoline Leavitt, his press secretary, the woman who keeps insisting Trump didn't draw this or sign this in 2003, she was 5 years old. She was too young even for Jeffrey Epstein in 2001. And she knows. You know, they're all... I love that these people are so certain.
Donald Trump has always viewed late-night satire as a personal assault. When the laughter starts, he doesn't just shrug it off, he strikes back with public insults designed to seize control of the narrative. This week, that reflex hit a boiling point following a segment on Jimmy Kimmel Live that set its sights not on Trump himself, but on his press secretary, Karoline Leavitt. Before we dive into the fallout, I have a quick question for you. Which country are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below. The segment began with Kimmel's trademark calculated composure, a calm voice, a stack of notes, and a promise to simplify the chaos. He introduced Leavitt as the administration's primary messenger, reminding his audience that a press secretary's core duty is to provide answers, not just echo slogans. Kimmel then rolled a montage of recent briefings, strategically pausing after each of Leavitt's responses. It felt like a teacher pausing after a student gives a blatantly wrong answer, allowing the silence to let the audience notice the inconsistencies on their own. The punchline that truly stung? Kimmel suggested that Leavitt might actually be struggling more than Sean Spicer, not because of her volume or intensity, but because of the sheer transparency of the messaging gaps. For Trump, seeing his flawless communication team mocked on a national stage was the ultimate trigger, turning a comedy monologue into the latest front of a very public media war.
With all due respect to former President Obama, he has no idea what he's talking about. The decision to fire Jimmy Kimmel and to cancel his show came from executives at ABC. That has now been reported, and I can assure you it did not come from the White House, and there was no pressure given from the President of the United States. And how do I know that, Kaylee? Because I was with the President of the United States when this news broke.
But it was her aggressive defense of obvious contradictions that truly set the tone. This wasn't a personal roast, it was a critique of a communication style that treats simple verification as an act of hostility. Kimmel's expose didn't rely on secret documents or leaked tapes, it focused on a pattern. He handed viewers a checklist they could verify themselves, what was actually said, what was later claimed, and what the public record proved. He presented this as a basic stress test for any official statement. If a claim can't survive a 30-second replay, it isn't information, it's marketing. The studio audience didn't just laugh, they broke into applause. The point was simpler and more effective than pure outrage. Kimmel wasn't asking people to hate a person, he was asking them to stop rewarding the fog. He offered one quiet observation that became the core of the clip. When an administration labels every question fake, they are really admitting they don't want to answer any. That line went viral instantly, and the predictable counter-narratives followed just as fast. For months, fabricated stories have circulated claiming Kimmel kicked Karoline Leavitt off his show after a fiery clash, stories that fact-checkers have repeatedly debunked. So, when Trump supporters tried to frame this latest monologue as another stage showdown, many viewers recognized the play, inflate the drama to avoid the substance. Trump's response stuck to the usual script. He posted an angry tirade, labeling Kimmel a propaganda clown, calling Leavitt brilliant, and insisting the segment only proved the media feared his administration. These posts weren't a rebuttal, they were a flood. The goal was simple: drown a calm critique in high-octane heat. But this time, the heat didn't land. Kimmel didn't fight back with more rage. Instead, he returned the next night with an even calmer tone, dismissing the insults in a single sentence: if the segment was so meaningless, why spend the whole day screaming about it? Then, he simply moved on, treating the outrage as if it wasn't worth the airtime.
Karoline Leavitt, his press secretary, the woman who keeps insisting Trump didn't draw this.
Karoline Leavitt chose to stay in her lane. At the podium, she dismissed the monologue as nothing more than Hollywood misinformation, urging the public to ignore late-night comedians and attempting to pivot back to official policy. But the damage was done, the clip had already reframed the entire conversation. This wasn't just comedy clashing with politics, it was a question of whether a public servant should treat basic transparency as a personal attack. Even Leavitt's critics have noted she's capable of restraint when the stakes are high. Following the high-profile Alex Pretty shooting in Minneapolis, she notably called the death a tragedy and urged investigators to let the facts lead, pointedly avoiding the inflammatory assassin rhetoric used by other Trump advisors like Stephen Miller. On camera and in the headlines, commentators pointed out how unusual this moment felt precisely because it wasn't an explosion. There was no physical meltdown, no thrown objects, just the visible impatience of a brand that relies on controlling the narrative, suddenly faced with a frame it couldn't command. By the end of the week, the viral takeaway wasn't that Kimmel had destroyed an individual, it was that he had exposed a recurring tactic: repeat, deflect, accuse, and hope the audience gets tired. A tired audience stops fact-checking, and for this administration, a checking audience is a dangerous one. That is why the clip exploded. It offered an alternative to the usual outrage cycle: a checklist, a replay button, and a reminder that calm, persistent questions can be much louder than screaming. For a politician who measures power by his ability to steer the room, nothing is more destabilizing than attention that refuses to be manipulated. Turn on notifications if you believe truth deserves repetition.